Talking Point is a special program on TVRI World that brings you in-depth conversations on issues that are making headlines across the nation. Hi, I'm Siska Becker. Today, I'll be talking with His Excellency, Mr. Kenji Kanasugi, Japan's ambassador to Indonesia, in his private residence. There is much to discuss, from Japan's view on Indonesia's G20 presidency, to Japan and Indonesia's relations, to His Excellency Kanasugi-san's time in Jakarta, Indonesia. Join us as we try to answer all of these questions in this edition of Talking Point.
Hello.
Hello, Your Excellency. Konnichiwa.
Thank you very much for having me today. Please.
Yes, thank you. Hello and welcome to Talking Point with me, Siska Becker, and my special guest for today, Japan's ambassador to Indonesia, His Excellency Mr. Kenji Kanasugi. Your Excellency, first and foremost, I would like to thank you for this wonderful privilege to have a conversation with you in your beautiful residence. Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity.
Well, it's me to thank you for having me today. It's a wonderful occasion for me as well.
Okay, and it's a great chance for me to say arigatou gozaimasu.
Terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih. So I would like to start our discussion with the most talked about talking point in Indonesia right now. It concerns Indonesia's presidency in the G20.
Yes.
As we all know, Indonesia's G20 presidency is both unique and challenging. Not only because it comes in the midst of the prolonged COVID-19 pandemic and also amid global geopolitical tension. What is Japan's stance on the organization and its goals for the G20 summit?
Well, I think, as we all know, G20 is such an important economic forum to address global challenges. And we will make our best efforts to support Indonesia's presidency for the success of G20 summit in November. I think Indonesia identified the three priority areas: digital transformation, global health architecture, and energy transition, and more recently, food crisis, where the globe is faced with. So I think we would like to see some tangible outcome for these important areas of discussion. How
would you think are Japan's suggestions for Indonesia so it can succeed in its G20 presidency?
Well, I think so far so good. In the face of Russia's invasion to Ukraine, we are suffering, and G20 could not be conducted the business as usual.
Yes.
So under such circumstances, Indonesia is placed in an unenviable position in a way, but so far so good. Indonesia successfully hosted the G20 foreign ministers meeting as well as the finance ministers meeting last month in Bali. So again, based on these success stories, Japan will continue to extend our cooperation for the success of the G20 summit.
Thank you for encouraging words, Your Excellency. Now, talking about one of the most highlighted missions from Indonesia. Indonesia is determined to bring all G20 members to come to the summit in mid-November this year. How do you think Indonesia has done so far to achieve this? And what should Indonesia do to really get all G20 members to come?
I think Indonesia is on the right track. President Joko Widodo took part in the G7 summit in Germany, and following that he went on to Ukraine and Russia. And last month he visited China, Japan, South Korea. All are important G20 members. He had a very good conversation with his counterpart in these countries. And again, Indonesia successfully hosted the G20 foreign and finance ministers meeting with all G20 members participating. So Indonesia is on the right track, and we hope that Indonesia will continue to engage important G20 countries in the run-up to the summit.
Yes, I think you've stated our collective wish together, Your Excellency. You've mentioned earlier in the beginning part of our discussion that the G20 meetings this year has three priority issues: global health architecture, digital transformation, and sustainable energy transition. In your perspective, what should be done by Indonesia to drive these priority issues for the sake of the global economic recovery? And what would be Japan's expectation in this regards for Indonesia?
Well, again, I think we would like to see some tangible outcomes for these important priority areas. And more specifically, from our perspective, realistic, practical energy transition is very, very important. Looking at the world right now, we are suffering from a high price of energy. Yes. Europe is particularly suffering right now. So while it's important to promote renewable energies, but we need to make the best use of existing fossil fuel technology as well. We need to co-fire with biomass, ammonia, hydrogen, as well as promoting so-called CCUS technology, carbon capture, utilization, and storage technologies. So I think it's very important for us to come up with a realistic, practical energy transition out of this G20.
Your Excellency, already we've had so many interesting insights. I would like to dive deeper into Japan and Indonesia bilateral relations. But first, we're going to take a little break.
Yeah, sure.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this in Talking Points. Welcome back to Talking Point with me, Siska Becker. I'm at the private residence of Japan's ambassador to Indonesia, His Excellency Mr. Kenji Kanasugi, as we continue our conversation as we shift to Japan and Indonesia's relationship, especially now in 2022. Your Excellency, last month President Joko Widodo paid a state visit to Japan. It was a short but fruitful meeting as both countries agreed to sign the Indonesia-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement in the upcoming G20 summit. How would you view the relations of the two nations now and in the years to come?
I think we are strategic partners trying to promote free and open Indo-Pacific. Yeah. And I think we have a long history of cooperation between our two countries. True. And traditionally, our relationship has evolved around economic interactions. And of course, economic cooperation is one important pillar of our relationship. Yeah. We'd like to see Indonesia becoming a production and export hub in the region. Okay. And for that matter, I think infrastructure development is still very important for Indonesia. So, for example, Palembang Port development in West Java province, which is a very important strategic port to enhance export capacity of Indonesia, and Japan will continue to support the Palembang Port development. And also MRT Jakarta, changing the lifestyle of many people in Jakarta. Again, we will continue the expansion of Jakarta MRT. Okay. So I think infrastructure development is very important. Okay. And besides, as I said, energy transition is a very important subject for our two countries, because we are archipelagic countries. Yes. And also we are reliant on fossil fuel energy. Yes. When we achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 in the case of Japan, 2060 Indonesia, we will be reliant on fossil fuel technologies. So I think, as I said, co-firing and CCUS technology are two important disruptive technologies, but we can work together to enhance these existing technologies. And also, in addition to the economic area, we are focusing on political and security cooperation in recent years. Japan's Coast Guard has been helping Bakamla, Indonesian Coast Guard, to extend or expand their human capacity. And also Japan is providing patrol boats to Indonesian side so that we can contribute to the expansion of maritime security of Indonesia. And also, this month, there was a military exercise called Super Garuda Shield. Yes. Traditionally, that was bilateral between Indonesia and the United States. But this year, it became multinational, And for the first time in history, Japan's self-defense force was invited to take part in the Super Garuda Shield. So that's really an interesting turn of our relationship. So to sum up, economic cooperation is important, but we need to diversify our area of cooperation into political and security field as well.
Okay, you've brought up many interesting points, Your Excellency, but now I want to focus more on the economic partnership between Indonesia and Japan. Because as we know, Japan has always been among the top tier investors in Indonesia for a long time. Now, of course, due to the pandemic, Japan's investment in Indonesia understandably dropped in 2020, but it bounced right back in 2021. Now, for the upcoming year, do you think Indonesia will still be as attractive as an investment opportunity for Japanese investors?
I definitely think so. Indonesia, if you look at Indonesia, full of young, energetic, ambitious people, and the population of Indonesia is growing by 3 to 4 million every year. So it's a very important as market, but at the same time, important hub of production and export in the region. So I'm sure that Japanese companies are looking at potential of Indonesia, and hopefully many more will come in the future.
Okay, now talking about potential investments in Indonesia, how are Japanese companies' commitment in electronic vehicle and hybrid cars production in Indonesia would be in the coming years, in your perspective?
Yes. As far as I know, Toyota and Mitsubishi are going to produce and manufacture hybrid vehicles here in Indonesia this year. And if you look at the reality, a real picture of Indonesia right now, I think hybrid is a good technology to bridge between combustion engine to EV. Hybrid has both features of combustion and EV. And of course, Japanese companies having looking into the possibility of EV, and further down the road, fuel cell technology and hydrogen engine may become available. So I think Japanese companies are behind no one in promoting renewable energy car in the Indonesian market.
Okay. The reason I asked this because you mentioned in some interviews before that Japan is actually looking forward for investment opportunities in digital and green economy in Indonesia. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, in the area of energy, particularly, as I said, we have a lot in common.
Yes.
Because we are archipelagic countries, we cannot connect our power grid with outside. So we have to do something about our domestic energy situation, and very much reliant on fossil fuel. Of course, promoting renewable is important, but existing energy technology remain very important for our two countries. So a lot of room for cooperation between our two countries.
Okay.
And digital transformation, Japanese companies are trying to adapt digital technology to enhance fishing capability of Indonesia. So I think there are a lot of possibilities both in digital transformation and green energy.
It can be said that we have many common challenges and therefore many common opportunities.
Yes,
Your Excellency, we're going to take another little break. After this, we're going to talk more about Japan-Indonesia relation. Stay right here in Talking Point. You're still watching Talking Point with me, Siska Becker, and my guest, His Excellency Kenji Kanasugi.
Thank you.
Your Excellency, you mentioned before about our commitment to achieve carbon neutrality in 2060 and 2050 respectively for Indonesia and Japan. Is there any possibility for both our countries to collaborate to achieve this goal?
Well, obviously, carbon neutrality requires all the countries' efforts, be that Japan and Indonesia. We are two of the largest democracies in the world, located in the same region, Indo-Pacific. A lot of commonalities, archipelagic nations, maritime nations. So I'm sure that there are a lot of room for cooperation in the future.
Now, another source of data that I received says that JBIC, Japan Bank for International Cooperation, stated that it would love to invest in health and food industry. Could you please elaborate more on this matter?
Yes, for example, food industry is a very promising industry because of the growing population.
Yeah.
And do you know a Japanese company called Glico?
Yes.
It's producing pocky. It's a kind of delicacies,
Okay.
chocolate delicacies. And
the different flavored ones.
Yes, it's long shaped.
Okay.
It's like a stick.
My children love those. I have
Yes.
them all the time at home.
Yes, and Glico recently invested to start production in Indonesia. Of course, what they have in mind is Indonesian market, but they would like to export from here to other ASEAN countries as well as North American market.
Okay.
So I think food industry is very, very promising. Yes.
Okay. In terms of food production, the whole world is also facing another crisis, which is the food crisis.
Yes.
Everybody's saying we should be ready for this. How do you think Indonesia and Japan can cooperate facing this global issue?
Well, I think for one thing, President Jokowi, when he visited Ukraine and Russia, encouraged both countries to stop the war and let Ukrainian wheat resume export overseas. So that's really an important diplomatic efforts by President Joko Widodo. Similarly, G20 is such an important forum to let the world know about what's happening in the world. And within the context of G20, Japan, Indonesia can surely enhance our collaboration. And also bilaterally, there are a lot of Japanese companies interested in investing in Indonesia in the area of food. Okay. And so energy security as well as food security is closely connected and very important. So again, a lot of room for cooperation between our two countries.
G20 is indeed a big moment for Indonesia and all around the world, but even after G20, after chairing G20 this year, Indonesia will be the president of ASEAN next year, and Japan at the same time will be leading the G7. How do you see that as an opportunity for both Indonesia and Japan to improve the prosperity of people not only in Japan and Indonesia, but the whole world?
Well, I think G7 as well as G20, ASEAN are all important forums. And for the chair country, it's imperative to keep the process intact and pass the baton to the next presidency. In the case of G20, after Indonesia, India is going to have presidency. And I think it's a long distance running in a way. One presidency can achieve certain things, but unresolved issues needs to be handed over to the next presidency, and next presidency needs to tackle these issues. So I think process-wise, it's very important for us to maintain close collaboration, particularly as you said, Japan is going to be the G7 chair and Indonesia ASEAN chair, so there is a lot of room. And incidentally, Japan-ASEAN is going to celebrate 50th anniversary of friendship next year under Indonesia's presidency. So I think all the more importance for two countries' cooperation.
Yes, as you mentioned before, Indonesia and Japan have enjoyed a long history of working together, and next year is going to be another milestone. We're going to commemorate the 65th anniversary of diplomatic relations. Now, what do you think can we expect more of both our nations' relations in the future? Are there areas that need to be maintained and areas that need to be developed and expanded? Like many people are saying, maybe education-wise can be a great opportunity for Japan and Indonesia's relations. Like maybe Japan can exchange and transfer some of its technological advancements to Indonesia. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's true. I think education is very important. Not only it brings about economic benefit for those involved, but it will enhance the mutual understanding between our two countries. And there are about 5,000 Indonesian students tertiary education students studying in Japan. And we offer a lot of scholarship for Indonesian students. So if you are interested in coming to Japan and the scholarship, please refer to our embassy. And it has to be both ways.
Yes.
And I think as Indonesia is expanding, Japanese education institution are very much interested in coming to Indonesia to have a closer collaboration between their counterparts in Indonesia.
That's very encouraging to hear, Your Excellency.
Yes.
Now, I see that you are wearing a batik shirt. I would love to ask you more about what do you think of Indonesian culture. We'll talk about that in the next segment.
Sure.
For now, let's take a little break. We'll be right back. Thank you for staying with us in Talking Point with me, Siska Becker, and my guest, His Excellency Kenji Kanasugi, Japan's ambassador to Indonesia. Your Excellency, it's been, I think, more than 1.5 years since the first time you arrived in Jakarta, Indonesia, in January 2021, when you were first appointed as ambassador. How have you found living in Indonesia so far?
It's a great experience. I think Japan is suffering from aging society with smaller number of children, whereas Indonesia is a young, vibrant society.
Have you got any chance maybe to learn about the culture, maybe learn the language?
Nama saya Kanasugi Kenji, Duta Besar Jepang untuk Republik Indonesia. Saya belajar bahasa Indonesia, tetapi berbicara sedikit. So that means that I'm not good at bahasa English.
But it was very good. Congratulations on your bahasa Indonesia.
But, you know, I like traveling, and I had limited but opportunities to visit various places in Indonesia. So I'm enjoying.
Okay, so I took a look at your Instagram page, the Japanese embassy's page on Instagram, and I see that you're quite active in informing all your followers on your daily activities. Now, from personal experience, I know that maintaining a social media presence is actually quite a commitment. You need like a team, and you need to set aside a special time every day to report on your daily activities. Is this like a strategic way to make a people-to-people relationship between Japan and Indonesia better?
Well, I think more like I'm trying to reach out to younger generation of Indonesian people so that they will come to know, or you know, they will come to have interest in how Japan is doing and how Japanese are behaving. That's why I'm putting a lot of postings in the Instagram. And in order to attract their attention, food is really the basis of the culture and the society. So I'm trying to enjoy a variety of Indonesian food.
From all your posts, the one that grabbed my attention is how you always promote what you eat every day and how you try different Indonesian cuisine. And I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, but one of your favorite Indonesian food is anything that has noodles in them. Like mie ayam yamin, mie celor. Is that true?
Yes. I try to enjoy varieties of Indonesian food. I tried manado.
Really?
Yeah, a bit
not too spicy?
A little bit spicy. Padang cuisine, a lot of varieties.
Even the rendang?
Yes, very beautiful cuisine. But that said, all in all, I prefer to eat noodle, be that Japanese or Indonesian cuisine. So mie ayam, mie bebek, mie goreng, whatever you name it. When I'm hungry, I tend to go for mie noodle.
Now, I see you're wearing batik shirt.
Yes.
And you also told a lot of people in many interviews that how you appreciate the batik shirt and how you enjoy wearing them. Could you tell us the reason why you enjoy to wear batik shirts every day?
Well, to start with, Indonesian temperature remain the same almost throughout the year. In the case of Japan, we have cold winter, hot and humid summer. But here, so long as I wear batik, I can go anywhere.
Okay.
I can go on the street, or I can attend the
okay.
dinner, formal dinner.
Yeah.
Batik is universal in Indonesia.
It's true.
And interestingly, when I go to different provinces, each province has its own batik.
Yeah.
So when I visited North Sumatra, for example, I purchased the local batik so that I can show off what I'm wearing. So this is a traditional batik, more like maybe Central Java.
Yes.
So when I visited Jogja, I tried to wear traditional batik.
Okay.
So I think even though batik is batik, but a lot of varieties throughout Indonesia. So I'm enjoying it.
So you're learning the culture from the batik.
In a way.
And since it is an integral part of Indonesian culture, you're actually living the culture right now.
Yes.
Now, I read in one of your interviews that so far you've collected 20 batik shirts. Has it been updated? Do you now own more than that?
It's close to 40 now.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
When I visit provinces, governors or mayors of the capital cities tend to give batik clothes for me. So the number of places I go is increasing, and as it goes by, the number of batik shirts I have is increasing.
Okay, that's wonderful. Now I can only imagine that your schedule must be really packed, and your duty as ambassador requires you to do a lot of activities. But if you had the free time, is there any tourist destinations in Indonesia that you would love to visit, and why?
Well, so far I visited a couple of provinces, and out of these provinces, I think I like Yogyakarta.
Okay.
Long history and tradition, and Jogja is a sister city relationship with Kyoto, which is the old capital city of Japan. And Kyoto and Jogja have a kind of similar atmosphere.
It's true,
And I enjoyed the Borobudur and Prambanan. I visited the batik factories in Jogja. So I think Jogja is one of my favorite destinations when I have time.
Now, Your Excellency, I know that it is still many years to come, but when it's time for you to leave Jakarta, leave for your next post, what would you miss the most about Indonesia when you're not here?
The beauty of serving Indonesia is to meet with so many Indonesian people who have a warm feeling about Japan. Indonesian people like eating Japanese food. They like to watch Japanese animes, Japanese culture. So I think what I'm going to miss when I leave Indonesia is interaction with Indonesian people who have warm feeling about Japan.
Your Excellency, I've had such a lovely discussion with you. Thank you so much for your invaluable insights, and thank you for sharing your personal stories in your beautiful residence. Again, we truly appreciate this opportunity. Arigato gozaimasu.
Thank you
Your
very much.
Excellency.
Terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih, sama-sama. And that's it for this edition of Talking Point with me, Siska Becker. I look forward to seeing you in the next episodes. Until then, sayonara.